I was recently on Instagram and I came across a video by Sydney Books, her account will be linked in the description, where she recommended 5 dark and disturbing thrillers. Those are some of my favorite things in thrillers, and 2 of the 5 I have already read and agree with. The first one is The Quiet Tenant by Clemence Michelon. This is a thriller following 3 women who are related to this man who is a serial killer. One of them is his daughter, one of them is his girlfriend, and the other one is his current victim. I really enjoyed this one and I give it 4 stars. Then another one on this list was one of my favorite books of last year, Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. This was absolutely 5 stars. It is following a character who is kind of strange, and she ends up cremating her dad illegally, which puts her in the spotlight, which then leads her to realize that her life might not be what she thought it was. This one was one of the most disturbing books I have ever read. With these 2 books being on this list, I had to read the other ones. So, in this video, I am going to be reading Appetite for Innocence by Lucinda Berry, Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli, and Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. I have read from Jennifer Hillier and Lucinda Berry. I have not read from T. Marie Vandelli. I'm so excited for these books. Having them on a list with these other 2 that I have read and loved, specifically Strange Sally Diamond, makes me so intrigued. I am ready to be disturbed. So I am starting this off with Appetite for Innocence by Lucinda Berry. I'm reading it on my Kindle, and I'm currently 32 pages in. So this one is, there's a lot going on. This is my second book by Lucinda Berry. The other one I read was a recently published book, and I thought it was just okay. But I was talking to my friend Michelle, and she said that her traditionally published ones don't go as dark, which makes sense. And this is one of her indie published ones. Just be warned, there's a lot just in the synopsis. A serial rapist is kidnapping teenage girls, but he's not interested in just any teenage girls, only virgins. He hunts them by following their status updates and check-ins on social media. Once he's captured them, they're locked away in his soundproof basement until they're groomed and ready. He throws them away like pieces of trash after he's stolen their innocence. Nobody escapes alive until Ella. So then Ella risks it all to escape, setting herself and the other girls free, but only Sarah, the girl who's been captive the longest, gets out with her. And they are hospitalized and surrounded by the FBI, and they are obviously trying to find the man responsible. Ella and Sarah are the key to their investigation, but Sarah's hiding something, and it isn't long before Ella discovers her nightmare is far from over. Yeah, this is a lot. So it is dual timeline, and we are following Ella and Sarah when they're in the hospital after they have gotten out, and we are not really aware of how that happened, but we're slowly learning that. And then we are also following them once Ella was just kidnapped and is in the basement. So there's 3 girls down there at that moment. So Ella and Sarah get out and Paige does not. So we are getting Ella and Sarah's perspective in the past as well, and seeing everything that has happened to them. Obviously, there are more secrets with Sarah. We don't really know what's going on as much with her because she's just thinking about things in the past and the girls that were there previously. It's interesting that we're not getting Paige, her perspective. So I don't want to say I'm enjoying this. This is absolutely not the word for a story like this, but it's so intriguing. I'm very invested in what is going on. It's so disturbing. It's so messed up. And I just am very compelled to keep reading. It is, it's something. But I tend to really love dark stories, and this one is working really well for me. I'm, once again, excited is not the word, but I'm very intrigued to see what happens and what led to them being able to escape and what's going on with this other character. I think it is very interesting and it's done well, and I am not okay. And the fact that these are the kind of stories that really draw me in says something about me. It's fine. I'm looking forward to getting back into this. I'm a little scared though. This is one of those books where I don't want to be enjoying this because it's not a fun time, but it is so interesting. So we are just really learning about these characters and what happened to them, and seeing how being in a situation where you were kidnapped and assaulted can like mentally impact you. Lucinda Berry is a former psychologist who I believe specialized in childhood trauma, and I think that that comes across really well. Everything feels like it is handled in a way that is respectful and also kind of educational. Like, this is not an educational story, but I feel like it's not just swept under the rug what's happening. Like, one of the characters deals with Stockholm syndrome, and that is like taught to the character, and like obviously that happens in real life, but I feel like in books sometimes it's easy to like skim over things because you assume that people know things. But it's just like fascinating to read. It's so messed up. Like, oh my gosh. I think this is these kinds of stories. This vlog is just gonna be me like not being able to form sentences apparently. Anytime in this video that I say enjoying, it does not mean I'm having a fun, silly time. But I think that stories like this are really important if you can handle things like this, because there are instances of children going through things like this, or even adults going through things like this, still not okay. But just like the psychology of how this can impact somebody, and it's rough, but like so compelling. I am enjoying the writing. Like, it is very engaging, and I'm looking forward to finishing and seeing the rest of this story. This is such a quick read, part of it because it's like a fairly short one, and also like I just want to keep reading it. So I'm gonna go do that, and I'll check in with you soon. I have finished Appetite for Innocence. Books like this are so hard to talk about because like the words that I would typically use, like enjoy and had a good time with and any positive words, don't technically apply in the usual sense, but they still apply because like I'm gonna give this book 5 stars. I think that it was so interesting and compelling, which led to me having a good time and enjoying it, but it wasn't like a fun time book and an enjoyable read in that other sense. So I 100% am going to be reading more from Lucinda Berry. This just like dealt with so many psychological aspects of this horrible situation happening to these girls and them adjusting back to life after escaping something so horrific, and all the things they went through that we learn about. Terrible. The ways that they have to like deal with each other's feelings and stuff is also very interesting to read about. I just really enjoyed it. It was a very compulsive read. I constantly needed to know what was going on. I think it was done really well. I think that it was handled in a way that was respectful. Like, nothing felt like it was, I don't know how to, not that it wasn't done for shock value because it's so messed up, but I feel like the things that were happening could be happening in situations like this, and I don't think that like that was done in a way that the only reason things were happening was to like be disturbing. This is one of her more messed up books from what I have heard. I do want to read some of her other ones. I've read one traditionally published book and it was just fine. So I think her like backlist self-published stuff is more of, or indie published, is more of the way to go with it, because I really enjoy this one and want to read more from her. So there wasn't anything like super extreme and like groundbreaking with her writing style, but it still kept me very interested and captivated. So 5 stars for this one. I am a little worried that I'm going to be comparing everything to this one for the rest of the video, but I am so glad that I read it. It wasn't really on my radar other than this, and it's one of the books that I've been most invested in throughout the year, so I guess at this point it's probably in my top 10, top 15, and I've read, 80 books, I think? So I very much enjoyed this one. Next up is theme music. I have made it 30% into theme music by T. Marie Vandelli. I just got my driver's license renewed, so I am in the car. It was a fine time, I guess.
I am reading this one for the Amazing Readathon. It is a sightseeing prompt with an author that uses initials, and this one is interesting. It is a very different vibe from the last book. So we are following a woman, Dixie, who has just decided to move into this house, and the thing is that this was the house that her father murdered her whole family in, and she was the only survivor as a little baby. What is going on with it? Hello? Anyway, she has no, like, real connection with her family. The family member that she lived in, no. The family member that she lived with had a very, like, don't talk about it approach to handling the situation. She didn't want to answer any questions. So the house comes up for sale, and Dixie decides to go look at it, and she feels this, like, calling to be there. And she ends up in this, like, rent to buy situation. They've been together for 5 years, and they were going to be living together, and he's like, I'm not living there. Well, he initially was, and then she told him that it was the murder house, and he's like, no, absolutely not. So they're, like, fighting about that. And she's in this house, and there's some, like, somewhat creepy things that are happening, like weird noises, and she starts to, like, feel things, and, like, they are similar to things that happened to her family during this murder. The family that lived there before her, like, they hated it. They thought that it was haunted, and they had been trying to sell the house for a really long time. And then the neighbor invited her over, and she's trying to keep it a secret that she's, like, the daughter that survived, and ends up telling her because she, like, made comments, and it made it pretty obvious that it was her. And then there was just this, like, plot introduced with the kid that was, like, her brother's best friend that lived in the house beside her, which happens to be the house that she just went to for dinner. So, like, she's in an on the rocks relationship with her current boyfriend, and then her first love calls and was like, hey, we should meet up. And she's like, maybe. So we're just learning about that. This hair. Ugh. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's not keeping my attention as much as I want it to. It has been really easy to put this book down and then go do other things and not feel like the need to pick it back up. I'm hoping that that feeling kind of goes away and I become more invested. At this point, I probably would give it 3 stars. Like, I'm having a decent time with it, but there's just nothing that's, like, super, super compelling to me. The story itself is interesting, but I'm not completely obsessed. I am fighting Libby. This audiobook returns very soon, and I don't have that much time. So I'm hoping to get a lot read. I am at my family's house today. I had to get my driver's license renewed, and then they're having a cookout thing tonight. I'm gonna make them play Overcooked. I'm very excited. So I'm gonna get back to reading so I can hopefully get this book done in time.
So at 212 pages in chapter 10 of theme music, I'm enjoying this one, but it's definitely not a favorite for me. It feels a lot more like a mystery, and the, like, investigation of this stuff just, I'm really bad at this today, is just not my favorite. It is kind of like the Lizzie Borden case, but not really. It's just the axe murder that is giving me those vibes. But our main character comes to the conclusion that her father is not the one that murdered her family, and she is looking into that. There's a lot of really messy relationships in here. Like, our main character and her boyfriend is, like, a whole thing, but then there's also the Rory guy that was the childhood friend and, like, her first love and stuff, and, like, everything with that is just really messy, and not in a way that it feels very compelling to me. Like, I don't really care about it. I think that this book is too long. I don't think that we need all of these pages to get to all the things that we've done at this point. Yeah, like, I'm overall enjoying it, but it's definitely not a favorite for me, which I'm kind of bummed about, especially after Appetite for Innocence. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this wraps up, but also I don't need the answers, which is kind of unfortunate. I thought that this one was going to really, really work for me, and like it is working for me, and it does have a lot of like dark themes in it, but I don't know if it's like just the possible haunted house thing that's going on. I do like the supernatural elements that are in here, but like it's still, I don't know. I am liking it, but I'm not loving it. I have finished theme music, and I did overall enjoy this, but it didn't really stand out to me. I think I'm going to give this one 3, maybe 3.5 stars. I am looking at the author's thing in the back, and this is her first novel, so I would read more from her. When did this come out? 2019. I'll have to look and see if she has any other books out. I think this had a lot of potential, but the way that it was done for some reason just like didn't completely work for me. I didn't end up being invested in the characters or the plot, and I really need one of the two things to be the case. Like in Appetite for Innocence, I was so invested in the characters and what was going on with them psychologically and everything, and this one like was interesting enough, but the characters didn't draw me in and the plot was too slow. I think the things that happened were really interesting, but I think this book was too long, and that probably is the reason that I didn't like this as much. I think if the pacing was different, I would have felt more invested, but it took so long to do everything, and then some of the things that happened I just like didn't really care about. The end of this was fine. It felt pretty predictable to me, which isn't specifically a bad thing, but there was nothing about it that I was like, oh, the way that was done was really cool. So probably 3 stars. This is not one that's going to stick with me at all. It definitely has some like dark and disturbing elements to it, but I didn't feel like disturbed while reading it. And I do read a lot of stuff that is kind of messed up. So this would not make my like top list of dark and disturbing books, but I still overall enjoyed it. Little Secrets is the final book I will be reading. I have read 2 books by Jennifer Hillier before and really enjoyed both. I think I gave both of them 4 stars. So I have really high hopes for this one. I am a little scared because this one is very like family focused with like a kid that goes missing, but Jennifer Hillier definitely is known for having dark and disturbing thrillers, so I'm expecting this one to be that without this list, and then it being put on this list, very high hopes. I have started Little Secrets, and I am 136 pages in, so I think I'm around 40% in, and I'm liking it, but the concerns that I thought I might have are valid, I guess. I will say where it just ended, like, I think it's going to get better for me now, but we are following Marin, and she is married to her college sweetheart, and she's really successful. She has these salons that she owns, and he runs his own company, and they have a son together, and this son came through multiple rounds of IVF. They were really struggling to have a kid, and very sadly, she is at the mall around Christmas with her son, and he is taken and is not found. So we are following Marin a year later, and the case is not solved still. Nobody's really looking into it other than the private investigator that she has hired to still be looking into things. And the investigator is like, there's not much else we can do, but then finds out that her husband is cheating on her. He is with a very young woman compared to her, and she's very much the opposite of Marin, and she's broke behind on her bills. And it says, to Marin, Kenzie is another enemy, but she's an enemy with a face, which means this is a problem Marin can fix permanently. So where I ended right now, that whole fix permanently thing came into play. It has been interesting enough so far, but it's just been a little too domestic for my taste. Obviously, losing your son, horrific. Obviously, finding out your husband is cheating on you, terrible. But being in the head of somebody experiencing these things is not fun. Like, obviously that's not gonna be fun, but I'm just not specifically enjoying that experience. I think the direction it's going to go in could make this pick up for me, but as of right now, it's not my favorite. The couple Jennifer Hillier books that I have read deal with, well, one, children, and then the other one is like a relationship issue, so like I'm not specifically surprised, but it's just not really holding my attention yet. The last chapter or so that I read was more so in line with what I'm interested in reading, so I'm assuming it's going to pick up for me. I would love to finish this today, and it's reading really quickly, so I think that is definitely doable, so I am going to get back to this. Fingers crossed it gets a little more exciting as we go, but really I think that is going to happen. I have made it to part 3 in Little Secrets, and I am enjoying this, and I like the twist that kind of happened in part 2, I guess. I don't remember there being part 2. So part 1 is pretty long, and then part 2 is pretty short. I'm not sure if there's going to be any more parts, but the stuff that happened in part 2 is like the little reveal that I was talking about, and like it was interesting enough. It wasn't anything that I was like, oh, this is gonna make this like the best thing I've read. I think it's okay. I feel like it is too long. I don't think that we need as much of this stuff in here. I don't know. This is just not my preferred kind of story. I feel like Jar of Hearts is definitely darker from Jennifer Hillier. The main thing that is happening is very dark and like messed up, but the way that it's done is just not very compelling to me. And I don't know why, but I'm kind of frustrated. It's interesting enough. I feel like it's going to be 3.5 stars. I'm liking it a little bit more than I was liking theme music, which I still enjoyed. I feel like I'm being so negative about theme music and Little Secrets because I enjoyed Appetite for Innocence so much, but I knew it. I was like, I'm going to just compare them, and they're not going to live up to the like darkness of the first one, so that's my own fault. I think it's gonna be 3.5 stars likely. There is a chance that like there's gonna be some like crazy stuff that happens in the last part of this, so it could be 3.5 or 4 stars. I know I'm not as like excited. I don't know how to talk about it. Not a lot happened. We are just watching, I think I said Marin earlier. I think it's Marin because they're calling her Mar. Anyway, we're just watching her processing everything, realizing that her husband is cheating on her, trying to figure it out, and then we're also getting some of Kenzie's insight, the person that Marin's husband is having an affair with, and we're learning some more about Marin's past and Kenzie and why she is the way that she is. Oh my gosh, my jaw hurts so bad. I have TMJ problems and it's terrible today. Anyway, I'm going to finish this up. I'm excited to see how it ends. Okay, but the end of this was so good. Like, the end feels like 5 stars, and the first 2 parts feels like 3 stars, so I am going to give this one 4 stars. I think that the way that everything came together was so interesting, and it was really fast-paced and compelling, and I understand why everything happened the way that it did leading up to it, but there's just something about it where, like, I wish that, I don't know, it was a little bit faster paced or something, but I ended up really liking this one. I feel like this has kind of been my thoughts on Jennifer Hillier on all 3 books. Like, they're fine. I generally enjoy them, and then the end is incredible. So maybe I need to keep that in mind moving forward, because I do have plans to read another Jennifer Hillier very soon. I think that there were some predictable things towards the end, but I think that the way that it was done was really well, so I didn't care that I was not, like, shocked by everything. This definitely leans more into the dark and disturbing in the last third of this, and that part leaves a lasting impression, so I definitely see why this one would be on a list like this. I forgot to update you on everything for the amazing readathon. So the 3 books I read in this video all worked for certain prompts. Appetite for Innocence worked for a city prompt where we had to read a book with nature on the cover. Theme music I used for a sightseeing prompt to read a book where an author uses an initials because of T. Marie Vandelli. And Little Secrets was a sightseeing prompt where there's one person on the cover. So with these books, I got a city prompt, and then I believe 2 400-point sightseeing prompts with theme music and Little Secrets. So out of the 5 books from this recommendation video, Strange Sally Diamond is definitely still my favorite. But Appetite for Innocence was such a win for me. I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the music. So definitely a success. If you have any dark and disturbing thriller recommendations, I would love for you to let me know in the comments. I'll have the video that Sydney did linked in the description. She has tons of recommendations on her Instagram and TikTok in general. If you've made it to the end and want to leave me an emoji to say you were here, you can leave me an eyeball for little secrets, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.